Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today is Thursday, March 22nd, 2018. Today I'm going to recap last night's NBA action, as well as looking ahead to tonight's slate. I'll pick tonight's Sweet 16 games, discuss a big coaching move in college basketball, as well as a big NFL trade, a big MLB injury, as well as something I messed up on my part 1 of my MLB preview podcast, and I'll address it. And I'll do part 2 of my MLB preview with prospect rankings and player comps for prospects. All right. Last night in the association, a big win for the Cleveland Cavaliers, 132-129 over the Toronto Raptors. Cleveland gave up 79 points in the first half, and they found a way to come back to win. They improved to 42-29. The Raptors dropped to 53-19. LeBron James was by far the best player on the court. 35 points, 17 assists, and no turnovers. And he set up a late three-pointer by Kevin Love, who's been terrific these last couple games since coming back from his injury. Kyle Lowry put up 24 in defeat. Big win for the Cleveland Cavaliers, as they're now 2-0 since Tyronn Lue has taken his leave of absence. The Heat defeated the Knicks 119-98. Big win for the Miami Heat, an important one too. They improved to 39-33. The Knicks dropped to 26-46. Kelly Olynyk's been one of the more improved players on the Heat, and not just on the Heat, but in the NBA as well. He put up 22 points and 10 assists in the win. Enes Kanter put up 23 points in defeat for the Knicks. The 76ers defeated the Grizzlies 119-105. Big win for the Sixers. They improved to 40-30. Memphis drops to 19-52. Dario Saric put up 15 in the win. Wayne Selden put up 18 in defeat. And this was a blowout. The starters sat in the fourth quarter of that one. An interesting game in Brooklyn as the Hornets defeated the Nets 111-105. Why is it interesting? Because Dwight Howard put up the NBA's first 30-30 game since 2010 with 32 points and 30 rebounds. And D'Angelo Russell put up 19 in defeat. Charlotte's 31-41. Brooklyn is 23-49 now. An important win for the Denver Nuggets, 135-102 over the Chicago Bulls as they improved to 39-33. Chicago drops to 24-47. Paul Millsap put up 22 in the win. Cristiano Felicio put up 16 in defeat. Paul Millsap's been pretty good since coming back from injury. An important win for the Los Angeles Clippers as they defeat the Milwaukee Bucks 127-120 in Milwaukee. Giannis Antetokounmpo had to leave the game early due to an injury. DeAndre Jordan put up 25 points and 22 rebounds in the win. Chris Middleton put up 23 in defeat. The Clippers are now 38-33. The Bucks are now 37-34. And I think Giannis should be fine, although there's rumors that he's missing the Bucks' next game. A big win for the New Orleans Pelicans as they defeat the Indiana Pacers 96-92. The Pelicans are now 42-30. The Pacers dropped to 41-31. Anthony Davis put up 28 points and 13 rebounds in the win. Victor Oladipo put up 21 in defeat. The Spurs get an important win, 98-90 over the Wizards, as San Antonio improves to 42-30. 5 straight wins for them. Washington drops to 40-31. LaMarcus Aldridge put up 27 points in the win. Kelly Oubre Jr. put up 21 in defeat. Tonight's slate of games, a couple of them, no TNT doubleheader tonight, so no picks going towards Maddie's picks tonight other than the Sweet 16 games. And by the way, 2-0 at Maddie's picks yesterday. I had the Cavs and the Spurs, who both won their games on ESPN, respectively. Tonight you have the Grizzlies at the Hornets. The Hornets, along with the Detroit Pistons, are 2 teams in the middle of nowhere in terms of the NBA standings. Do you want to tank or do you want to push for the 8 seed? And they're, like I said, 2 teams in a weird spot. And I think the Knicks would have been in this weird spot too had Porzingis not gotten hurt. So yeah, Charlotte hosts the Grizzlies. You have the 76ers at the Magic. The 76ers have to take care of business there. The Pistons at the Rockets. I mentioned the Pistons being a team in the middle of the nowhere. The Rockets are hot. They've won 6 straight. They should make that 7 straight tonight. The Lakers at the Pelicans. Don't be surprised if this is a close game, and don't be surprised if the Lakers somehow find the way to win this game. But the Pelicans should be able to win that game. They have the best player on the court in Anthony Davis. The Jazz are at the Mavericks. The Jazz have to take care of business against a tanking team. And last but not least, you have 2 tanking teams in the Hawks and the Kings. That's your slate for tonight. 4 humongous games tonight, which begins the men's Sweet 16. Tonight, the first game you have from the South region, 11-seeded Loyola Chicago against 7-seeded Nevada. Such a fascinating Sweet 16 matchup considering nobody thought these teams would be in this position. The Ramblers are coming off yet another improbable win, this one, though, over the Tennessee Volunteers, thanks to a game-winning shot by Clayton Custer. The Wolfpack are coming off an improbable comeback win over the Cincinnati Bearcats, in which they trailed by 22 points with 11 minutes to go and somehow found a way to win in regulation. This game also features the most interesting characters of this NCAA tournament, with Sister Jean, the 98-year-old fan of the Ramblers, who is also their captain. And from Nevada's side, you have the head coach, Eric Musselman's wife, Danielle, and daughter, Mariah. And Mariah's been interviewing players throughout the tournament. This was a tough call, but give me the Ramblers in a close one, led by Custer. And I do think that this game will be very close. So the pick to go to the Elite Eight is Loyola Chicago. You'll see Sister Jean another day. In the West region, you have 7-seeded Texas A&M against 3-seeded Michigan. The Aggies are coming off a very impressive beatdown of the North Carolina Tar Heels, in which that game was pretty much over at halftime. The Tar Heels tried to get back in it by shooting threes, but A&M was ridiculously hot from 3 in that game. The Wolverines are coming off a great win over the Houston Cougars thanks to a buzzer-beating 3-pointer by Jordan Poole. This should be a fun and entertaining game, but the Wolverines are the deeper team, led by Muhammad Ali Abdur-Rahman. So give me Michigan to advance to the Elite Eight. South region, 9-seeded Kansas State against 5-seeded Kentucky. Here we have a rematch of a 2014 round of 64 game. Kansas State is coming off a narrow win over the Cinderella UMBC Riveteers. Kentucky is coming off a win over the Cinderella Buffalo Bulls as they pulled away late in that one. Dean Wade should be back for Bruce Weber's squad, but I like John Calipari's talented squad a lot better, led by Kevin Knox and the improving Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, to win the Battle of the Wildcats to advance to the Elite Eight. So give me Kentucky there over Kansas State. In the West region, 9-seeded Florida State against 4-seeded Gonzaga. The Seminoles are coming off an incredible come-from-behind win over the 1-seeded Xavier Musketeers. The Bulldogs are coming off an impressive win over the 5-seeded Ohio State Buckeyes. The Zags are just a better team here, led by Killian Tilly and Jonathan Williams, and I like them to advance here to the Elite Eight. And I won't be surprised if this is a blowout either. The pick here is Gonzaga, although I'm going to get slapped in the face because I said it's going to be a blowout. Watch Florida State win this game and surprise me. Part of me wants to say that this could be this year's version of Arizona Xavier, in which everybody loves Arizona so much, and then underdog Xavier just went in and beat Arizona outright. This could be the same situation here, but I don't see it. Big coaching news in college basketball today. Dan Hurley accepts the head coaching job at UConn. I think this is an excellent hire by UConn. Hurley turned down Pittsburgh, and now Pittsburgh is now looking at other candidates. They got turned down by Hurley, and then before they got turned down by former Indiana coach and now current Georgia coach Tom Crean. So great hire for UConn, and I expect UConn to succeed under Hurley. Big trade in the NFL today as the Giants traded away Jason Pierre-Paul to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for their 3rd-round pick and a 4th-round pick swap. This clears cap space for the Giants to extend Odell Beckham Jr. and maybe Landon Collins as well. From Tampa's standpoint, this improves their pass rush, and their pass rush was one of the worst in football last year. And JPP makes that defense better. And this also has potential ramifications of what the Giants do with the second pick. Maybe they trade down and try to draft Bradley Chubb. So this, in a weird way, affects the Colts because we know the Colts want Chubb really bad. I'm going to do a mock draft on next Monday's podcast. And a big injury in baseball and under the radar one, David Phelps, who was set to be one of the good relievers for the Mariners this season, hurt his elbow, so he's getting Tommy John surgery, so he's going to miss the season. That's a blow for the Mariners because he's been an effective reliever the past couple years with the Mariners and then before that with the Marlins. And before I mentioned I screwed something up on my podcast from my first part of my MLB preview, I did. CJ Cron, who I picked to be the breakout player on the Angels this season, was traded to the Tampa Bay Rays in the offseason. I completely forgot about that move. It was very under the radar. So I think Cron will have a breakout with the Rays this season. And my new pick to be the Angels' breakout star is Tyler Skaggs, who is projected to be their number 3 starter, who's shown flashes in the past. I think could be the year where he puts it together. Now I'm going to do my prospect rankings. I'm just going to do a top 50. I was going to do a top 100, but that was a lot of work. So I'm going to do a top 50, and I'm going to make comparisons to current major league players to each of my top 50 prospects. My number 1 prospect coming into the season is Ronald Acuna, an outfielder from the Braves, who's going to be on the team sooner than later. I predict he is going to be the Braves' big breakout star this season. My comparison for him is Marcell Ozuna with his average hitting and power projections and his speed and athleticism. I think Marcell Ozuna is an appropriate comparison for Acuna. Number 2, I have Vlad Guerrero Jr., third baseman of the Blue Jays. He is obviously going to replace Josh Donaldson. Maybe Donaldson's traded this year and Guerrero gets a look at the big stage. My comparison for him is Manny Machado. He has a lot of power potential, above average hitter. So there you go. Number 3, Nick Senzel, third baseman of the Reds. I mentioned him in my first part of my MLB preview podcast. I mentioned that my original comp for him was Chris Bryant. I realized that probably is a little different. So I'm changing it to Adrian Beltre from when Adrian Beltre was in his prime because of his great hitting and the difference between Senzel and Bryant is the power. Senzel isn't projected to have as much power as Bryant did, so that's why I have been pegged to Adrian Beltre. Number 4, Gleyber Torres, shortstop of the Yankees. He's probably going to play second base with the Yankees eventually because Didi Gregorius is manning shortstop for the Yanks for the long-term future. My comparison for Torres is Jose Altuve, who has a lot of speed. Not the greatest defensive second baseman. Can contend for batting titles, 20 homer power. So that's why I have the Jose Altuve comp for him. 5, Eloy Jimenez, outfielder, White Sox. He might be up this year, maybe next year. His raw power makes me compare him to Giancarlo Stanton. 6, Victor Robles, outfielder, Nationals. He's untradeable for them because the Nationals in all likelihood will lose Bryce Harper in free agency. My comp for him is Andrew McCutchen because of his hitting abilities and his 20 to 25 homer potential. 7, Michael Kopech, right-handed pitcher from the White Sox. Has a ton of potential. He has a fast fastball in the 90s. And my comp for him is Chris Archer of the Rays. 8, Forrest Whitley, the righty from the Astros, who suspended 50 games to start the year due to PEDs. He might be up at the end of the year for the Astros. I think his ceiling is an ace, and I compared him to his future teammate, Justin Verlander. 9, Francisco Mejia, catcher, and he could play third base, or they're trying him out at third base, are the Indians. Because of his questionable defense at catcher, my comparison for him is Kyle Schwarber, who may be, like Schwarber, destined to be a DH someday. Because they don't know where to put him. And he can flat out hit. Number 10, Fernando Tatis Jr., who's an infielder from the Padres. Probably going to be a shortstop. High 20s homer potential, great hitter. My comp for him is Francisco Lindor. Number 11, Bo Bichette, infielder of the Blue Jays. Maybe he's up at the end of the season as well. My comparison for him is Corey Seager because he has a high ceiling from a hitting standpoint and can be a home run hitter in the 20s. 12, Brandon Rogers, infielder from the Rockies. This comparison about to give out is sort of funny considering this is a former Rocky, Troy Tulowitzki, who has a ton of power potential, and considering that he's going to be playing most of his games probably in Coors Field, which I doubt the Rockies are going to trade him. So the funny comparison, which is my comparison for him, is Troy Tulowitzki, due to his power upside and the fact that he's going to be a Rocky. 13, Walker Buehler, righty from the Dodgers, from Vanderbilt. And it's funny because my count for him is Sonny Gray, who in Buehler's ceiling is a number 2 starter, maybe even an ace on the right team. He'll probably be behind Clayton Kershaw someday. Gray's my comparison, and it's funny because Gray is also a Vanderbilt product like Buehler. 14, Alex Reyes, the righty from the Cardinals, who had Tommy John surgery last year. He's a big wild card for the Cardinals. My comparison for him is easy. It's Aaron Sanchez because they'll try him out as a reliever and they'll try him out as a starter and he'll go back and forth. 15, Mitch Keller, righty from the Pirates. He has a high ceiling. The high ceiling is a number 2 starter on a contender. And maybe at worst case scenario, a number 3 starter. So my comparison for him is Gio Gonzalez, who is a number 3 starter on a contender. 16, Kyle Tucker, the outfielder from the Astros. Maybe he's up at the end of the season. But where does he play is my question, because the Astros are just loaded. They have George Springer in their outfield. They have Josh Reddick. Marwin Gonzalez usually plays in left. My comparison for Tucker is Christian Yelich because of his batting potential and has a ceiling of a high 20s in home runs. 17, Brent Honeywell, the righty from the Rays, who unfortunately had Tommy John surgery recently, so he won't pitch this season. My comparison for him would have been Luis Castillo because Castillo got called up from the Reds last year and showed a ton of promise, and that's probably what Honeywell would have done. 18, Mackenzie Gore, the lefty from the Padres. Maybe he's up at the end of this season. He has a ton of potential. My comparison for him is Arizona's Robbie Ray. 19, Hunter Green, the righty from the Reds. High upside. He was supposed to be a two-way player, but he's probably just going to be a pitcher. A really, really good fastball in the high 90s, so my comparison for him is Noah Syndergaard. 20, Royce Lewis, the shortstop of the Twins. He was the number 1 overall pick in 2016. My comparison for him is Ian Desmond, because maybe they convert him to the outfield like what the Rockies did with Desmond. What the Rangers did with Desmond. The Rockies did it too. So that's why Desmond's my comp for him. Has home run potential in the 20s. Provides speed. 21, I have Willie Adames, who's an infielder from the Rays, who they acquired in the David Price trade in 2014. He has a lot of upside. I've heard a lot of comparisons for Adames, but mine is Anthony Rendon because of his versatility and his potential in the high 20s for homers and an above-average hitter. 22, Tristan McKenzie, the righty from the Indians. He's one of my sleeper prospects. I think he gets called up this season potentially. And his ceiling to me is a number 2 starter. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him, and that's why my comparison to him is Jacob deGrom. DeGrom was slept on by many pundits, and DeGrom is now one of the premier pitchers in baseball. And that's what I could see McKenzie turning into. 23, Brendan McKay, who's a two-way player, first baseman, and the lefty out of the Rays system. He was drafted last year. He has a ton of upside with both ways as a hitter because he has the ceiling of a 300 hitter with home runs in the high 20s. My comp for him is Eric Hosmer. And as a pitcher, he's a lefty, and I'm about to compare him to a former Ray, David Price, who has a ceiling of an ERA in the mid-twos. So it'd be interesting to see what the Rays do with him long term. 24, I have Sixto Sanchez, the righty from the Phillies. A ton of hype about him. Very high fastball. In the 90s. Maybe he could hit like a 99. My comparison for him is a good one, Luis Severino. Because a lot of people are comparing him to Pedro, and Luis Severino is compared to Pedro. And as I said on this podcast, I'm comparing these guys to current players, not former players. 25, I have Lewis Brinson, the outfielder from the Marlins, who was traded to them in the Christian Yelich deal. My comparison for him is a former Brewer, ironically enough, Carlos Gomez, who has a ceiling of home runs in the mid-20s and could be an above-average hitter. 26, I have Alex Verdugo, the outfielder from the Dodgers. The Dodgers view him as untouchable. He's projected to be a great hitter with home run potential in the 20s and at worst in the low teens. My comparison for him, this is probably one that's going to go wrong. He'll probably end up a better player than this guy was in his prime, Josh Reddick. 27, I have Lewis Robert, the outfielder from the White Sox, who has a ton of potential. He's being overlooked because of Jimenez in the White Sox system, because of he was Cuban and has potential of a 300 hitter with 30 home runs. Yoenis Cespedes is my comp for Robert. Number 28, Austin Hayes, outfielder of the Orioles. He will be their starting right fielder. He is projected to be an above-average hitter with a possible 30 home run hitter as well, at worst mid-20s in home runs. My comparison for him is his teammate Adam Jones. 29, I have A.J. Puke, the lefty from the Athletics. He's actually out for the year. He's getting surgery. It sucks for him because I think he could have gotten called up this year to possibly be a reliever. His ceiling is an elite reliever, maybe a 2-inning reliever or closer, like an Andrew Miller. 30, I have Scott Kingery, the second baseman from the Phillies. His ceiling is a very above average hitter with 30 home run power. We've got like a bunch of these Phillies prospects, so my comparison for him is Brian Dozier. 31, I have Mike Soroka, the righty from the Braves. He has potential to be an ace, and at worst a number 2 starter. And he could be an innings eater in the future, and that's why I have him compared to Adam Wainwright. Number 32, I have Kyle Wright, another righty from the Braves, who has a ton of potential, a lot of strikeouts, and that's why I'm comparing him to Steven Strasburg. 33, Estevan Florial, outfielder from the Yankees. This guy is untouchable, and there's a reason why they didn't trade him for Garrett Cole this past winter or Sonny Gray this last summer. He has potential to be a leadoff hitter, can be a 30-30 guy, and hit for average in the threes. So my comparison for him, might sound optimistic, but I'm going to say it, Charlie Blackmon. 34, I have J.P. Crawford from the Phillies. Very up and down. He was below average the last couple years in the minors, or not really below average, but not meeting up to expectations. He's a very good defensive shortstop and has 20 home run potential, and he could be an above-average hitter. My comparison for him is Didi Gregorius. 35, Juan Soto, outfielder from the Nationals. He has a ton of potential A lot of people are comparing him to his possible future teammate, Victor Robles. But Soto, I'd say, has a little bit less of a ceiling than Robles, because I really think Robles has a chance to be special. Soto has potential to be a home run hitter in the 20s. My comparison for him is the same one for Austin Hayes, which is Adam Jones. Number 36, I have Keston Hiura, second baseman from the Brewers. He was coming off an injury, so that's why he was drafted later than people thought a year ago, and here we are, and he's one of the best prospects in baseball. He's projected to be above average hitter, home run power in the 20s. My comparison for him is Dustin Pedroia. 37, I have Jack Flaherty, righty from the Cardinals. A lot of people wanted him in their trades, and most notably last year when the Marlins wanted, in the Ozuna deal, they wanted Flaherty. The Cardinals wouldn't give up Flaherty. He has a ton of potential, and at worst, he's a number 3 starter on a contender. And at best, he's an ace, and on the right day, and his destiny's probably a number 2 starter on a contender, which is why I have him compared to Jose Quintana. That sounds a lot like Jose Quintana to me. 38, Willie Calhoun, who's going to be the Rangers DH this year, has a ton of potential, 30 homer potential. Above average hitter, I have him compared to Pablo Sandoval. And I'm talking about the Pablo Sandoval that was awesome on the Giants when the Giants were winning their championships. Number 39, I have Luis Urias, who's an infielder from the Padres. Projects to be an above average hitter, home runs in the mid-20s. I have him compared to former Padre prospect Trey Turner. That might sound a little bit too optimistic there. 40, I have Leody Taveras, outfielder from the Rangers. Projects to be a 30-30 guy potentially in the future. Above average hitter. Although this player I'm about to compare him to hasn't gotten to a 30-30 yet, I believe. But I think he could be similar to Steven Souza Jr. 41, Ryan McMahon, first baseman of the Rockies. He's going to be a rookie this year on the Rockies. The player I'm about to compare him to, I'm probably going to be wrong about this because McMahon's projected to be like an average hitter that can hit at most 20 home runs, can play all around. That's why I have him compared to Marwin Gonzalez. He'll probably have better stats than Marwin Gonzalez because of Coors Field, so that projection probably is going to be wrong. 42, I have Cal Quantrill, the righty from the Padres. He really didn't have that great of a year last year, but still has a ton of potential. At worst, he's a number 3 guy on a contending team. I have him compared to James Shields, and no, not the James Shields of the White Sox right now. I'm talking about the James Shields who was tremendous on Tampa Bay and the Royals 4 or 5 years ago. Number 43, I have Taylor Trammell, outfielder from the Reds, who has a ton of speed, could be a home run guy in the 20s, could be a hitter in the 270s. I have him compared to Brett Gardner, although I'm probably going to be wrong about that. Number 44, Franklin Perez, righty of the Tigers. This projection is going to be very optimistic. Perez has potential to be a great starter, future ace, with an ERA in the 2s. I have him compared to Corey Kluber. 45, Michael Baez, righty from the Padres. He also has a ton of potential and is only going to get better. And this sounds like a Max Scherzer type to me. 46, Carson Kelly, catcher of the Cardinals. This comparison's obvious. Yadier Molina, because Carson is projected to be a 20 homer guy, very above average hitter. And that sounds like the guy he's going to eventually replace in St. Louis. 47, I have Austin Meadows, the outfielder from the Pirates. Been disappointing the last couple years after being drafted in 2013 and bursting out on the scenes. They think he's going to replace Andrew McCutchen eventually. I think Meadows starts the season in the minors and gets called up middle of the year. He projects to hit in the 270s and be in the high 20s for home runs, which makes him compare me to Jason Worth. The Jason Worth from the Nationals, not the one from the Phillies. And I'm talking about 12 through 14 Jason Worth. 48, I have Anthony Alford, outfielder from the Blue Jays. Projects to hit in the 300s. 20 homer power, possibly. Maybe he sees time in the big leagues this season. Could hit leadoff, which is why my comparison for him is Dexter Fowler. 49, I have Jorge Alfaro, the catcher from the Phillies. He'll start the season on the Phillies in all likelihood. They got him in the Cole Hamels deal. He was one of the key prizes in that trade. He projects to be a hit in the 290s and have homers in the 20s, which is why I'm comparing him to Salvador Perez. And last but not least, 50, Nick Gordon, shortstop of the Twins. He projects to be a great hitter in the 290s, possibly. Not much power, which is why I'm giving him a comparison to D. Gordon, as well as great speed and decent defense. All right, that's it for the podcast for today. Tomorrow I'll be back recapping the Sweet 16. Pick the games for Friday. During the Sweet 16, I'll pick the women's games as well. I'll also recap NBA from tonight and look ahead to tomorrow night and go over any other news that breaks. If you want to subscribe to my podcast, just click the subscribe button if you want to listen to future podcasts of mine. I hope you guys have a nice day, everybody.